What do you want to confess that no one else in your real life knows? Story 1. I did a 2-hour online test for college, and we had to stay on camera for the entire 2 hours until everyone was finished. The problem was that I had an accident half an hour into the test and had to stay seated without moving because if I did, everyone would notice. So I waited until everyone was done, got my marks, and could finally turn off the cameras. I ended up getting 100% on the test. Story 2. In my group of friends consisting of couples in serious relationships, I'm the only single guy. In fact, I don't think I've ever been in a committed relationship for more than 2 weeks. The idea of being part of a couple has always sounded exhausting, and it was something I never really worried about rushing into. I didn't truly realize how lonely I've been until one night while playing beer pong, when I was on the same team with one of the ladies. She was a little tipsy, and after I won the game for us, she hugged me. It didn't occur to me until that moment that since leaving home for college, those kinds of physical gestures that once brought me comfort as a kid weren't always there for me anymore as an adult. Story 3. I'm unhappy in my marriage, but I still love my wife. I think if we met today, we wouldn't even date, much less be married. But the thought of leaving her for my own happiness makes me feel sick. She constantly says how happy I make her, how much she loves me, that she couldn't live without me. And I love her too. But we are just so different. We got married young because we believed God was guiding us to do so. Our responsible adult figures told us it was smarter to wait. But we and our pastor thought we knew better. We did premarital counseling, so we actually have a solid base for our marriage. But we've changed in political views, personal beliefs, leisure activities, movie interests, religious beliefs, which she doesn't know about, and just about everything else. There's very little common ground anymore. I can say we both still enjoy watching anime together and listening to audiobooks of her choosing as we fall asleep. I've tried to recommend some and a few podcasts, but they didn't work for her. We haven't been intimate in months, and she recently discovered she's romance averse and is fine with basically never having that part of our relationship. I'm not like that at all. She doesn't work right now and we're under financial stress. But I still want her to spend money on herself because it helps with her depression. She buys hobby supplies which give her a sense of accomplishment. Despite me working more than 50 hours a week, I still do most of the cooking and cleaning because of her mental health. But I still love her deeply. I'm just unhappy. I care for her. I want to be with her. I'm just not happy. I feel like I put in more effort than she does. But she's so appreciative, and I know it isn't malicious on her part. I just enable the behavior. She's seeing a therapist now, recently because of finances, but I don't think I can afford one for myself or couples therapy. My wife described herself as romance averse because she gets uncomfortable seeing romantic acts. She actively seeks out kisses, hugs, and cuddles from me on a regular basis. After looking into it more, I don't think she's actually aromantic based on her behavior. She seems more romance averse specifically when viewing those acts. She recognizes that she doesn't do a fair share of the work, and it bothers her, which contributes to her depression. I'm not blaming her for not doing enough, but that doesn't change the fact that I still have to do more than my share. She is actively trying to improve herself for our relationship, which is a big reason I'm still with her, but I'm still unhappy in this moment. We both know we need couples counseling. It's just not possible right now. Honestly, just getting this off my chest and sharing it helps me feel a little lighter. Story 4. I remember going out to the woods with my mom and her friend to clear away some brush. For a short while, I ended up on my own with another person. In that quiet moment, their behavior gave me a strong feeling that something wasn't right, and the memory has stayed with me ever since. I was young and didn't really understand, but I knew enough to say no. He kept pushing, and even though I resisted as much as I could, some things still happened that I never wanted. It didn't go much further than that, but it was enough to leave me with a memory I have carried in silence. I have never told or mentioned this to anybody else, not even on the internet, so it feels strange but relieving to finally put it out here. Story 5. I suffered a concussion about 10 years ago that caused me to lose almost all of my episodic memory. Over this last decade, I've regained some, remembered people I used to know, facts about them, how I felt about them, but most of the event memory is still gone, or just comes in little flashes. It's embarrassing for me because Prior to the head injury, I had a photographic memory. Now my memory feels broken. I don't tell people because I don't want them to feel sorry for me. I feel weird even confessing this here. I also don't want people to get angry. Once I was standing waiting for public transportation, and someone walked up to me, said hi, knew my name, and asked me how I'd been since he hadn't seen me in such a long time. I had zero idea who he was. When I explained about the concussion, he got angry and told me I was lying because I didn't want to talk to him, then stormed off. I don't want a repeat of that. Story 6. My final semester of college was ruined by the pandemic, including the capstone project I had been working on for several years. I got dumped by the person I thought I would marry the day before I left campus for the last time. Every single one of my friends stopped talking to me a couple of months afterward. I tried seeing a therapist, but she seemed more interested in telling me about her own life than actually helping me. In the past year and a half, I've lost more family members than I can count, both to COVID and other causes. Those deaths included 2 grandparents and my 16-year-old cousin who tragically took his own life. I am more lonely than I've ever been, and I don't have anything to look forward to in my life. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. Every night I fall asleep wishing I just wouldn't wake up in the morning. Story 7. I'm generally a good guy. My wife ensures we have balanced nutrition in our house. But every once in a while I get this irresistible urge for foods on the unhealthy side of the nutrition scale. The burgers, the fried chicken, the chips, the Doritos. So when this urge comes to a breaking point, I make an excuse of going shopping and head out into the evening alone. I prowl around those shopping areas in my part of town that have all the fast food joints, the fried chicken places, the burger chains, the pizza spots, until I find one that suits my craving of the moment. Once I get my food, I find a dark corner of the parking lot and back the car into an obscure spot. Over the course of about 20 minutes, I indulge. It's a secret ritual. I feel more alive than ever. My mouth is overwhelmed with flavor. My brain and body are in some sort of quantum singularity of pure joy and light. The food surrenders its salty, cheesy goodness to me. And then comes the ice-cold, fizzy soda, washing it all down with pure pleasure. And then slowly, eventually, the last bite is gone. The last sip is drunk, and it's all over. It's just simply over. After a 10-minute food coma, I slowly ease the car out of its lonely spot in the parking lot and go home. I've been doing this for years. My wife and family don't suspect a thing. Story 8. I have this condition I was born with called Klinefelter's syndrome, and I remember as a young kid always wondering why my body seemed so different. It turns out that this condition gives me an extra X chromosome. Growing up, I had to take testosterone injections because my body doesn't produce much, if any at all. I didn't hit puberty until the 10th grade, when I had a huge growth spurt. I'm currently 25 years old and 6'5", with wider hips than most men, and I still haven't grown much facial hair. I'll get maybe 5 or 6 hairs on my chin, but that's about it. It used to bother me a lot because I thought, who could love me with such a flaw? But over time, I overcame my shame and learned to love myself for who I am, flaws and all. No one is perfect, and everyone has something about themselves they hide from the world. I'm no longer ashamed of something I shouldn't have been ashamed of in the first place, and I'm glad I can finally share my perspective on a secret no one really knows. Story 9. My headaches are actually tooth pain, massive tooth pain. But after a traumatic childhood experience with a dentist, I haven't been able to work up the courage to call one. I've also been so depressed for so long that I eventually quit brushing my teeth. They're in terrible shape now, and I'm so scared to even look at a dentist's office when I drive by, let alone talk to one and hear the whole, "Why didn't you just brush your teeth" lecture again. I honestly didn't expect anyone to see this, but since so many people have and commented that I can't keep up, I'm editing this. I'm working on getting on Medicaid. Someone told me it actually includes dental insurance. I've also been told some dentists don't shame people who haven't been in a long time. So I'm trying. I just have no job, no money, and I live in America, so you all know how that is. For those worried about my health, it's a broken tooth. No abscess or infection, it just chipped while eating. It hurts. My whole head hurts. But I have one of those oral medication gels from the pharmacy that's helping with the pain until I do get Medicaid or find a dentist who will see me without it. Story 10. My brother was killed in July of 2020, and I've been hiding the fact that I've become a functioning alcoholic because of it. I lie to my parents, my wife, my friends, and my coworkers, and I justify how much I drink in front of them by saying I only drink 3 drinks on Saturdays, since it's my only day off. But they don't know about the 3 drinks I had before going out with them, or the shots I take before I clock in at work, or the cocktail I make at home in the morning to have with lunch. I work night shift, so my wife doesn't see me come home and crash for hours before I wake up and sober up before she gets home. I always enjoyed drinking before my brother died, but now I'm afraid to go without it. Drinking keeps my mind foggy and allows me to be just happy enough to get through work and maintain relationships I almost threw away when he died. I know it's wrong, but I'm the oldest of my parents' kids, and I always encourage my younger brothers to take risks and just live their lives, telling them they could always call me if they got in trouble. The day he was killed, I was asleep when he called, and now I can't sleep unless I drink because it keeps the nightmares away. I've never told anyone he called, and I don't plan to in real life ever. Story 11. I was friends with someone who later turned out to be involved in violent extremist plans when I was around 14 or 15. I was introduced to her by a friend who was deeply into the darker side of online true crime communities. Her name was Elizabeth, and although we didn't speak much directly, I knew her through a true crime server I was awkwardly brought into that was filled with disturbing people. Elizabeth was the owner, and she mentioned she had been receiving exciting letters from someone and was thrilled about working on a big project. It turned out those letters were from a dangerous individual who encouraged her to build a homemade explosive. She even had plans to target a place she worked at because she believed they were harming the environment. Everyone that knew her was shocked. I was too. She seemed just like a regular person online who loved nature. But to find out she was working with such hatred behind the scenes was beyond me. I reflect on this story with some online friends, but I know if I ever told the wrong person in real life, I'd probably be questioned by the authorities. Despite how close you may feel with online friends, until you meet them in real life, you never truly know who you're dealing with. Please be careful with who you talk to and who you associate with, online or off. It could get you in serious trouble or even put you in danger. Story 12. I quit my job last week and haven't left my house since. There is garbage piling up that I don't care to remove. I haven't showered. I'm not exactly sad, but I am depressed, angry, and full of resentment towards my friends, family, and even strangers. I dislike people because I've been hurt so many times in the past. I've tried my best to move on, still smiling at strangers, even when 99% don't smile back. That kills me. I'm afraid I won't meet any new friends or partners. I don't want to die, but I don't feel like I want to live either. I think people are incredibly self-centered. I've had suicidal thoughts before, but now I don't even have the motivation to try again. I feel completely lost and like a loser. My mom has supported me emotionally in the past and has been my strongest supporter, but she is sick and almost 80, so I've stopped telling her how I feel to avoid worrying her. I used to thrive in my personal life and career. Smart, determined, good-looking, funny, fun to be with, a great friend, and a wife. I don't feel like I'm any of those things anymore. Story 13. This has been the worst time in my life so far. My grandfather was evicted. My uncle lived with him, and they were going to have to move across the whole country. My grandfather is a hoarder, so it was already stressful to get him to throw things away. We had to drive 5 hours to his house every weekend to help him move and clear out his stuff. Since there was so much, especially belongings from my late grandmother, my uncle had to take one person with him on repeated trips to the landfill about 40 minutes away. He went about 10 times and took me, my dad, my mom, and my brother. During those drives, he talked with my whole family about life, the past, growing up, home, and the future. With me, he talked about girls and life. He even started giving me some of his sentimental things, like a buck pocket knife, a university jacket, and a nice watch. It seemed a little suspicious to me. When we finished most of the moving, we had to go home because school was starting, so that was my last weekend there. I said goodbye to my uncle, and he gave me a half-hearted bye. I also said goodbye to my grandfather, which might have been the last time I'll ever see him because he's very old. The following weekend, my parents went back to finish packing and to prepare for the 4-day trip across the country, with my grandfather, my uncle, and their dog. On the way there, my parents got a call saying my uncle had died. They rushed over and had to deal with his death, which was devastating for everyone, especially my grandfather, who was still grieving my grandmother. It was also very hard on my dad because it was his brother. To make things worse, they still had to move out of the house in just 2 days. Then out of nowhere, my aunt, who hadn't spoken to anyone in the family for 15 years, suddenly showed up. She did help, but it was overwhelming timing. My dad ended up having to go on the 4-day drive with my grandfather and stayed for a month at his new place to help him settle in. When only my mom came home from what was supposed to be a weekend trip, I asked where my dad was. She explained that my uncle had died of a heart attack and that my dad had to go with my grandfather. I didn't see my dad for a month, which was hard because it was already the busiest time in my life. When my dad finally came home, I asked him about the details. He started crying and explained that my uncle had taken his own life. My grandfather had been the one to hear it and find him. I can't even imagine how painful that must have been. By the time my dad finished telling me, he was sobbing, and there wasn't much I could say. On top of all of this, my own life has been overwhelming with school and sports. I wake up at 6 in the morning, get to school by 7, stay until 9 at night with practice, and then have homework. It's exhausting. Sometimes I just want it all to stop. At the very least, a hug would help. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my situation. Story 14. My boyfriend went on a business trip out of state over Valentine's Day, and I flew out 2 days later so we could spend time together. Since his company was paying for the hotel, we wanted to take advantage of it. He had already gone to some meetings and dinners with coworkers in the days before I arrived. When I got to the hotel room, I immediately felt a really bad vibe, as if something unpleasant had happened there. He told me he was sick the whole time we were there, so at first I just assumed it was a cold or fever and took care of him. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One night I tried to kiss him and comfort him in more intimate ways, but he brushed me off and said he wasn't in the mood. I didn't think much of it since he was unwell. Months later, when we were at home, he went to the gym and left his computer on, with his email open. I know it breaks a lot of privacy boundaries, but I started snooping and found a draft email dated the same time as when we were at the hotel. It read like a diary entry, describing that before I came to meet him, he had gone out drinking with coworkers. One of them, an older man, took him to several bars. By the end of the night, my boyfriend was very drunk, and when he returned to the hotel, that man followed him to his room and assaulted him. He described it in detail that made me feel sick, and I knew then why I had sensed something was wrong. I don't think he will ever tell me himself, and I will never bring up that I know. It still keeps me up some nights, but what helps me feel a little better is that this all happened before the pandemic. He is now permanently remote for work and will never have to see the person who hurt him in person again. Story 15. Even though she loves and adores me, I really don't feel any affection for my mother. She had me when she was 16, I was unplanned, and my father, who was every kind of bad person you could imagine, wasn't even there when I was born. She went around asking family for help and eventually found my father's parents. They offered to adopt me and help raise me on the condition that she finish school, clean up her life, and mature enough to eventually take care of me. About 10 years ago, during a summer break in high school, was the last time I willingly visited her. She has cleaned up her life for the most part, but she still moves constantly and her personality can be very harsh when she's relaxed. She's still loving and checks in on me every few months on Facebook, asking how I'm doing, if I think about her every day, and when I plan to visit her. Right now, she lives a state away, about a 4-hour drive. I humor her and tell her I've missed her, but honestly, I only do it so she doesn't feel alone. She raised me for just the first year of my life, while my grandparents raised me the rest of the time. My father's long gone, having caused a family separation about a decade ago. I wish I felt something more for her, but I don't. There's no real emotional or personal connection, and it makes me uncomfortable when she acts so close and affectionate. I plan on moving to Japan in a few years, partly because I love the country, and partly because I don't want to live with the fear of violence in the United States anymore. But I also don't want to carry any part of my old life with me that I don't have to. I'd love to tell her how I really feel and go our separate ways, but both sides of my family have a history of mental illness and SUIC, and I just can't risk pushing her into a darker place. Story 16. I know I'll never tell anyone about this in real life, but I need to get it off my chest. When I was a teenager, I went through a very dark phase. I often had disturbing thoughts, sometimes even imagining hurting people. It wasn't about anyone in particular, just random people. At one point, I even prepared myself to act on it. I asked a man for the time with the thought of attacking him, but I froze at the last second and walked away. The rush of adrenaline and the strange mix of fear and energy reminded me of how I felt years later during my own struggles with suicidal thoughts. When I turned 19, I swore to bury these feelings deep and never let them control me again. Since then, I've avoided anything that might bring them back. Once I even tried watching the show, Dexter, but had a panic attack because it reminded me too much of those old feelings. I don't want to do those things now, but sometimes I can still sense those buried thoughts deep inside, and it scares me. Story 17. People know some of this, but not the full truth. I'm a short girl, 4'10", and it's badly affected my self-esteem. I've always felt like I'd never be loved because I'm abnormal or unattractive. I've been working on improving my mindset for years, and I've made some progress. But whenever a guy shows interest only for physical reasons, my heart breaks a little. It makes me feel unwanted and destroys my confidence. I crave emotional connection, but too often I jump into situations just for the instant comfort of having someone there, only to end up with people who don't truly care about me. I'm naturally a giver, which means I try to accommodate others, but it usually leaves me hurt. These days I'm trying to set boundaries, work on my personality, and focus on my fitness so I can feel more secure in myself without needing someone else to validate me. But it's a long road, and being around people constantly reminds me of my insecurities. It's hard to move forward on self-improvement when I always feel my height makes me less. I know this probably sounds small compared to what others go through, but I just want to see the day when I finally don't feel inferior. Story 18. I hate my ex-girlfriend. She was the first girl I ever dated and loved. We broke up and got back together multiple times in a cycle that drained me. She came from a difficult home life and had gone through trauma, and I was always there for her, listening, comforting, being the safe person she could lean on. But when I went through something terrible myself and opened up to her, she dismissed me and even got angry. She talked often about other guys she had dated or liked, but expected me to always be there for her. When she was kicked out of her house, I took her in. When she moved in with her dad, I still spent time with her, brought her on family vacations, and listened to her vent endlessly. This past summer, I finally stopped talking to her when she started dating someone else, but still insisted on tagging along with my family like nothing had changed. Even now, my mom still thinks we might reconcile, but I know I never want to see her face or hear her voice again. She took advantage of me, and I don't know if I'll ever feel comfortable letting someone into my life romantically again. Story 19. I've been struggling with an addiction for most of my life, and as I approach 30, I've decided to finally end it and work on bettering myself. This addiction caused serious problems for me, including difficulties with intimacy and feelings of shame. I used to spend hours every day on unhealthy habits, watching explicit videos, trading them online, and even video chatting with strangers. Over time, I pushed myself further, chasing novelty in things I wasn't even genuinely attracted to in real life, just for the thrill. I created this split between what I thought of as my real-life self and the person consumed by the addiction, and I carried that lie behind the backs of friends, family, and partners. I'm tired of living like that. I'm tired of lying to the people who matter most. As of today, I'm 24 days clean, and I'm proud of how far I've come. The urges are still there, but I'm controlling them, and life feels better without being controlled by this addiction. My relationships are improving, I'm doing better in school, and I'm starting to feel genuine happiness again. Story 20. I'm usually a really open person with people. I'm in a committed relationship with someone I absolutely love, but I still struggle with guilty, romantic, or flirtatious thoughts about other people. It's happened before in past relationships too. At first, everything feels fine, and I've never cheated, but I do enjoy the attention when people flirt with me. And sometimes I let myself get into it a little. The strange thing is, no one knows me as well as my partner does. No one could ever replace the connection we share. But even knowing that, I still feel guilt. I've never touched anyone else while being with him, and I always make it clear to others that I have a partner. My thoughts aren't even really sexual, just playful, flirty moments that never cross into something physical. My partner, though, sees cheating as absolutely unforgivable. He's ended lifelong friendships over it and would never tolerate it in a relationship. He's completely devoted to me, and sometimes I panic that I'm not as fully focused on us as he is on me. This has happened before with other people, and I've never admitted it to anyone. I feel like it's immoral to be committed to someone and still entertain those thoughts or moments of flirtation. Maybe I'm too hard on myself, but the shame of it is something I can't confront. I'm not looking for advice. I just needed to let it out somewhere. Story 21. I didn't study a single day during the last academic year, and I'm terrified this year will end up the same way. Ever since the lockdown started, it feels like my brain just switched off. Forget studying. I don't even feel like doing basic tasks like eating or drinking water. Sometimes I'll miss breakfast because of classes and won't even notice unless my mom points it out. It's not intentional. I barely feel hunger anymore. I've tried setting alarms as reminders to eat and drink, but they only work when I remember to set them. Because of this, I've lost a lot of weight. People sometimes congratulate me on it, thinking it's intentional, and I feel awful because I know it's not healthy. Most days I just sit around doing nothing. Even starting a TV show feels like I've accomplished something. For some reason, my brain resists starting anything, even things I know I'd enjoy. In the last year and a half, I've only managed to watch 2 shows. The biggest problem is my studies. My grades before lockdown were strong enough to get me into university, which is still online for now. If I had kept working at that level, I might have earned a scholarship. Instead, I've fallen behind, and it's put a big financial strain on my family. I always feel guilty and want to change, but it feels impossible to catch up. For every small step I take, it feels like others are taking 10 big ones. If I don't get the highest score, it feels pointless. I know even a low grade is better than nothing, but my brain insists on all or nothing. I've tried talking to my parents about it, but they just laughed and said I was being dramatic. On top of that, I'm constantly worrying about how my family will react when they find out I'm gay. I worry about whether I'll ever get a job, whether I'll ever make a living for myself, and if I'll ever be able to move to a country where being gay isn't such a problem. And if I can't, sometimes I wonder what the point of all of this is. Story 22. I genuinely don't like having autism, and a big part of me hates myself because of it. My mom always tells me she thinks having autism has been more of a strength than a struggle for me, but I've never told her how much I really don't feel that way. I have high-functioning autism, which isn't as limiting as more severe cases, but I still struggle a lot with social skills and the anxiety that comes with it. Growing up in schools where autism was used as an insult definitely didn't help my self-image. Sometimes I can't even bring myself to speak when ordering food or buying groceries. And I constantly worry that people think I'm being rude when really I'm just anxious and trying my best. I don't have many friends, and I've never been in a relationship. Some days I wonder if I'd be a better, happier person if I hadn't been born with autism. Maybe even a better child to my parents. Story 23. I don't want to be the dependable one in my family anymore. I don't want to be the supporting structure. I just want to feel loved and held. My parents have been fighting for as long as I can remember, stuck in a failed marriage. It's at the point where my mom won't even cook for my dad but still takes money for groceries. Yet she always acts like she's the victim. I can't tell her what I really think, because if I do, she threatens us with suicide or hurts herself. So everyone stays quiet. I want to speak the truth, but I know it would cause my family to collapse, and I don't have the strength to handle that. On top of that, I went through a devastating breakup 7 months ago. I lost all sense of direction and the will to keep going. For months, I was haunted by the thought that I never gave her closure, that she might still be suffering because of me. I eventually reached out to give her closure, but in doing so, I relived the pain all over again. Now I feel lost and without direction. I have big dreams and want to live up to my potential, but I feel like people around me are trying to drag me down while I'm already at rock bottom. And honestly, this is less than half of what I'm carrying inside. There's so much I can't even say because I don't want to think about it. To cope, I do reckless things. I go on long drives with no destination, make impulsive decisions that mess me up later, and stay awake all night replaying everything in my head. I've never smoked, never drunk alcohol, never used drugs. I try to be reasonable, honest, and kind. I care about people with all my heart, and yet I feel like life just keeps slapping me in the face. I don't understand why it has to be this way. Story 24. I've been constantly relapsing with self-harm. A few months ago, I made it to 108 days clean, which was the longest streak I've ever had. But after I relapsed, I haven't been able to stay clean for more than a month and a half at a time. Right now, I'm 12 days clean, but I've been fighting the urge for the last half hour, and it just won't go away. My boyfriend is the only person who knows. He's the only reason I even try to stay clean, because I can't bear lying to him or hurting him by admitting I relapsed again. He's understanding and supportive, but I know it breaks his heart knowing I hurt myself. I used to use small disposable razors, but I threw them all away hoping it would stop me. Now I can't even shave, and I still find myself looking at sharp objects and imagining using them. Box cutters, scissors, kitchen knives. Typing this all out is my way of avoiding the thought of relapsing right now. Another reason I'm still here is my youngest brother. He's my best friend and sometimes the only person I stay alive for. We're so close, and I could never do something that would hurt him like that. Lately, I've had really dark days where I've wanted to give up, but I haven't acted on those thoughts because of him, my boyfriend, and even my pet rat. It might sound small, but those are the reasons I'm still alive. Story 25. I feel like I've turned into someone numb and apathetic toward nearly everything, and I don't know why or how I became this way. From the outside, the idea of not caring about anything ever again terrifies me. When I finally graduated from university earlier this year, after working hard to raise my poor GPA into a decent one, I didn't feel the slightest bit of pride. I feel indifferent about an elderly relative who is very sick and might not have much time left. I've completely lost interest in hobbies and passions I once loved, and I keep forcing myself to try new ones just to fill the void. But none of them stick. I feel incapable of giving or receiving love, whether platonic or romantic. When people express love toward me, I feel like I can't understand it. It's like they're speaking a language I'll never learn. In some ways, I've grown as a person over the past few years, but I hate myself for becoming this detached, for letting myself reach a point where I can't feel much of anything anymore. Story 26. I may regret posting this, but when my wife gave birth to our son recently, the first few days of caring for him drove me into a very dark place. My wife had a C-section, so aside from feeding, all responsibilities fell to me since she couldn't get out of bed. The sudden shift from having time for myself to taking care of a newborn around the clock left me overwhelmed. I felt embarrassed because I didn't even know how to change a diaper until the hospital nurse showed me. I felt like I'd lost my entire identity. Suddenly, I couldn't focus on my dream job I had only started 4 weeks before. Couldn't go to the gym, and couldn't even step outside for more than a quick meal. The lack of sleep crushed me, and by the third day, I was seriously considering walking out of the hospital at night and ending my life. Thankfully, I didn't. After that first week, things got better, and now as my wife and I learn to balance responsibilities, I feel more like myself again. I've been up every night this week with our baby, and I don't even mind it. I love watching him fall asleep on my lap. I've never told anyone about this because I felt guilty. My wife was already struggling, and I wanted to be strong for her. As a man, I didn't feel like I had the right to admit to postpartum depression when it's usually discussed in terms of mothers. I didn't want anyone to think I'd be a bad father or that I didn't want our son. I'll probably never share this with my wife, but I needed to say it somewhere. Story 27. When I was very young, a close friend of mine acted in ways that made me uncomfortable because of what was happening in her own home. I don't remember everything clearly, but I knew something wasn't right. On one visit, I woke up to something on the screen that felt disturbing. Much later, I learned that she was living through things no child should ever have to face. She often begged to stay at my house because, for her, it was the only place that felt safe. Her mother turned a blind eye until eventually Child Protective Services became involved. She doesn't remember what she did to me, and honestly, I don't remember everything either. I think my brain blocked some of the trauma. I've never told my family about that night. The man who hurt her is still free because she didn't have exact dates to give investigators. I don't know who to talk to about this, and I think I'll carry it with me for the rest of my life. Story 28. It's crazy how much we all secretly go through. Sometimes I struggle to understand why we are so isolated with our thoughts, but at the same time I get it. Even now as I type this, I keep wondering if I should actually put it down. That hesitation has been happening more and more for me over the past few years. I get these terrible thoughts that pop into my head out of nowhere, like wanting to run away from my life, or even from my girlfriend whom I love, or hoping she would break up with me. Then I catch myself and wonder, why did I even think that? Where did it come from? The truth is, sometimes I don't feel happy with my life, but at the same time, I do. I enjoy it in many ways and I don't regret the choices I've made. Still, the feeling lingers. Maybe I feel unfulfilled. Maybe I haven't found the one thing that truly gives me purpose. Lately, I compare my problems to others and tell myself they're trivial, that I shouldn't feel the way I do. But I still do. I can't help it. What's really been bothering me lately is the idea of growing up. I kind of hate it. Everything just seems to get harder, and with what's happening in the world, it feels like things will only get worse. I go through life working hard for reasons I don't even fully understand. Maybe just because I'd be bored otherwise. Yet even when I'm working, I still feel bored. It's the monotony of everyday life that wears me down. Story 29. I've never felt more depressed than I do right now. I went through a rough period of depression back in middle and high school, but it barely compares to this. Since June, everything has gone wrong. My long-term boyfriend broke up with me, and I still don't understand why. It's left me stuck, unable to do the things I normally would. I failed a course that sets me back in my degree, and if I fail it again, I won't be able to graduate at all. My only grandfather passed away from diverticulitis, and knowing he suffered until his last breath was heartbreaking. Many family members got sick, and one of my uncles died. My godmother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it keeps getting worse, while my grandmother was rushed to the hospital for chemo for multiple myeloma. All of this has been happening while our city went into one of the longest lockdowns we've ever faced, and I've still had to keep up with more than a full load of university requirements. On top of everything, I live on the other side of the world from my family, which makes it even harder not being able to be with them. I went into this year hoping it would be different, hoping it would be the year I could finally get things on track. But every day feels like it just falls apart more. It got so bad that I stopped eating and drinking for over a week, and there were days I couldn't even bring myself to get out of bed. It feels like everything I care about ends up getting ruined somehow. This year has been the worst of my life, and I don't know how to cope even though I'm getting help. I don't want my friends or family to know because I don't want to add to their burdens. It would hurt me even more if they worried about me when they already have enough to deal with. Story 30. My wife is pregnant with our third child, and honestly, I don't think I can handle it. I love my two kids with everything I have, but this was never the life I wanted for myself. From the start of our relationship, I was firm on not wanting children, ever. Now here I am, stuck in a cycle of working, driving home, sleeping, and repeating. I get no time for myself, and with another baby on the way, personal time will be non-existent. I don't even see myself connecting with this child at all. After we found out about the pregnancy, I begged my wife to take emergency contraception, but she refused because she believes life begins at conception. So here I am, facing another child, another mouth to feed, and another huge shift in my life. It's not just about the baby, though. It's about how my entire life has gone in this relationship. I love my family and they love me, but I've become nothing more than their life support system. And that's all I feel like. I've missed out on so much because I got married too early. And sometimes I wonder what life would have been like if I could redo everything. If I never messaged that girl I met online all those years ago. I've even thought about ending it all. I drive by myself every day, and sometimes the thought crosses my mind. What if I just drove off the road or into a pole at high speed? People would think I fell asleep at the wheel. My wife and kids would be cared for since my life insurance is enough for them to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. I don't know anymore. I feel like I'm drowning, wishing I could redo the last 10 years of my life. There's so much I would do differently. Story 31. I completed my studies all the way through a PhD and now I'm working as a scientific researcher. On paper, it's a good career, and my family, friends, and husband are incredibly proud of me. sometimes too proud. But the truth is, I feel like an imposter. I never really knew what I wanted to do with my life. I just had the ability to study and was pushed forward because my family wanted me to succeed. Now I feel like I wasted years of my life. I worked myself to exhaustion for my PhD, all while dealing with a toxic, narcissistic boss. Deep down, all I want is a simple, peaceful life. A house with a garden, some chickens, goats, dogs, and cats. I want to work normal hours, earn a proper salary, and live calmly. Instead, I live in a flat in a crowded city, working from 9 in the morning until 8 at night, 6 or even 7 days a week. My salary is low compared to what someone with my degree should earn, and I don't even have job security. I can barely pay rent, let alone think about buying a house. I'm constantly stressed by the responsibilities I carry at work, and I don't see my family or friends. I barely spend time with my husband, and I don't do anything for myself anymore. No hobbies, no joy, just work. I'm tired all the time. I don't even know what else I could do instead, and I don't want to tell my family how I feel because they would be so disappointed. In their eyes, I've succeeded, but in my heart, I don't feel successful at all. I feel lost. Story 32. No one really knows the extent of my childhood trauma. Only two of my friends have ever noticed the tension between me and my family, but they don't think much of it. One of my earliest memories is being forced to eat alone in my room while everyone else sat together at the dinner table, just so I wouldn't ruin the mood. I lived in my grandparents' house with cousins, my brother, and sometimes my parents. My grandparents basically raised all of us, and my aunt and uncle were around often too. Whenever I was allowed to sit at the dinner table, I became the target of relentless teasing. The adults would join in, and the kids were encouraged to laugh at me. I was always the only one picked on, and eventually I would get angry and throw a fit. That just ended with me being sent back to my room, while everyone else continued dinner like nothing happened. Over time, I went quiet. I started refusing to speak at all, since even my voice was something they mocked. My uncle and grandmother were the worst. I remember my uncle, in front of the entire family, literally picking me up by the back of my underwear while everyone laughed. It happened so often it felt normal to me, and I would just wait silently to be put down so I could leave. My mom thought it was funny too. It became clear that saying anything, or even showing anger, only made it worse. This started when I was about 4 years old. My earliest memories are filled with embarrassment and unhappiness. After I stopped talking to people, my grandmother gave me a nickname, Debbie Downer. From then on, that was basically my name. I heard it more than my real one, and it made me feel even worse. Around that same time, I wasn't even allowed at the dinner table anymore. I got used to waiting alone in my room for food to be brought to me. If I went downstairs to return my dishes, I'd hear the nickname again and get teased. I grew so isolated and dreaded leaving my room so much that I sometimes avoided going to the bathroom until I couldn't anymore, which just gave them more reason to mock me. This was my reality from age 4 to 9, until my brother and I finally moved in with our parents once my mom quit her job as an EMT and my dad's swing shift schedule allowed it. But by then, the damage was done. Now I'm 19, and I still feel like that sad, embarrassed, anxious, and isolated little kid. I honestly can't recall a single happy memory from my childhood, only the bad ones. I was diagnosed with depression at 12, but I believe it started much earlier. At family reunions now, everyone acts like nothing happened, like they're innocent. Some of their smiles feel like they're mocking me all over again. No one knows what I went through, and when I tell friends that I can't remember a time in my life when I was truly happy, I can tell they think I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. It's just the truth. Story 33. I'm burned out. We lost our unborn baby a year ago, and in the past 6 months, my wife's grandmother and my daughter's grandfather, from another relationship, both passed away. My wife is pregnant again and constantly sick, so I've been handling nearly everything at home for her and the household. At work, my boss was fired, and they put me in charge of his responsibilities, with a project due in 6 weeks that feels impossible. On top of that, I spent 3 months fighting with the state to fix our health insurance, and they're still sending bills for something we never agreed to. I don't even know if I'll be able to take the full paternity leave when our baby arrives, because my wife's unemployment ended and we're close to living paycheck to paycheck with all the price increases. My family lives far away and hasn't been there for me at all. Not even since we lost the baby last year. I have no friends anymore. I barely sleep. I find little joy in anything. And my wife feels I'm being distant about the pregnancy. I'm just trying to avoid breaking down completely, but it's been nonstop stress since the end of last year. I wish I could afford therapy, but I can't. At this point, I don't even know if I can afford rent and basic living expenses for my family. Story 34. I love people far more than they ever love me, and I show it. I listen more than anyone listens to me. I'm there for others far more than they are for me. The only exception is my partner, but even then, sometimes it still feels one-sided, though not because of anything wrong with him. Most of the time I don't mind. I know people are struggling and I can carry a lot. I like to care for others. I don't complain about it because it sounds selfish, and most of my friends deal with mental health issues. I don't want them to feel like a burden. But deep down, I'd love to have a friend like me someday. At the start of COVID, I checked in on everyone regularly. I offered love and support whenever it was needed. I do that outside of pandemic times too. If someone needs help, I drop everything for them. But rarely, if ever, does anyone check in on me. It's burning me out, and I hate that I can't be there for everyone the way I used to. Just recently, I spent 2 weeks supporting a friend through her relationship struggles. 1 to 3 hour phone calls almost daily. Then when I finally expressed my own anxiety about what's going on in the world, all I wanted was a little reassurance. Instead, she cut me off with, "I don't want to talk about this right now. Let's change the subject." That stung. And now that I've started setting boundaries, I'm losing friends altogether. Maybe it means something better is on the horizon, but right now it just feels lonely. I've been struggling to make new friends too, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Compared to what others go through, this might sound like a stupid confession, but I just needed to say it. Story 35. I feel so isolated, and it seems to get worse year after year. My mom, though she's a good person, is deep into her religion in a way that feels cult-like. My dad and I are on okay terms, but he spends time with people who hold extreme political views that I want nothing to do with. My grandfather is fading with age, and after him, I have no other close family. My friends all live hundreds of miles away, and I never seem to have enough time with them. It feels like I'm slowly being forgotten in the background. I regret moving to where I am now, because it's nearly impossible to find people I connect with. I keep trying, but some days it's a real struggle. I don't talk about this to anyone because what's the point? It wouldn't solve anything. I know I need a change of pace, but that would mean moving again, which would only isolate me further. And since I've always been the one people rely on, showing weakness just doesn't feel like an option. Story 36. I grew up in an abusive home. Emotional, physical, and mental abuse. I didn't realize it fully until later in life, but I was a deeply unhappy kid. I was constantly stressed, afraid of upsetting my father and being hit, or being degraded and insulted over my interests. It felt like almost anything about me set him off, like he just didn't like me at all. On top of that, I wasn't good in social situations. I was needy, hyperactive, and temperamental, so I felt like I had no one. That's not even the hardest part to admit. What I don't usually talk about is the way I coped. When I was in middle school for about a year, I lived in an extremely vivid fantasy world. It was elaborate, filled with characters from TV show whose personalities I altered, with complex relationships and entire storylines. I even gave myself a different name. In that world, I was loved and valued. I mattered to more than one person. My life there was exciting, fun, and even dangerous in the right ways. It was everything my real life wasn't. I was completely consumed by this fantasy. I would rush home just so I could pretend for hours. Sometimes I would pace around acting it out, and when my dad noticed, I learned to just sit and stare into space so he wouldn't ask questions. Then one day, it all stopped. After about a year, the magic of it wore off, and I was just thrown back into reality. Nothing in real life had improved, but the fantasy was gone. It feels embarrassing to admit because it sounds sad and even pathetic. I know it wasn't healthy, but at the time it gave me happiness in a life that felt so lonely. Now things are better. I've worked through a lot, and I can honestly say I'm the happiest I've ever been in the real world. Story 37. I'm deeply depressed. I lost one best friend 8 years ago, and then 2 years later I lost my closest, dearest friend. the one who was going to be my best man at my wedding. He passed away just 3 weeks before it. I remember going to the tailor to cancel the suit they had made for him, and I just stood there staring at it. From the outside, I have a great job and a comfortable life, but inside I feel hollow. Depression eats away at me, and I feel like I have no control over my life. I don't feel joy in anything. I don't feel passion for anyone or anything anymore. I miss my friends every day, and without them, I feel detached from life. I can't tell anyone how I feel because I don't think anyone would understand or care. I miss connecting with people, having a reason to go out, having a spark for life. Now all I do is work, eat, and sleep. That's it. My brother struggles with severe anxiety and can't leave the house. It kills me to see him like that. He was a standout basketball player in high school with scholarship offers from multiple schools, but he turned them all down because of his anxiety. Doctors have tried every possible combination of medications, but nothing has helped. I miss talking to him, and it feels like I don't even have a brother anymore. I just want him to be happy, but I feel powerless. Everyone thinks I'm this happy guy with everything figured out, but the truth is, I feel like there's nothing to look forward to. My parents are aging, people around me keep dying, and all I see in the future is sadness. I just want to sleep because in my dreams I feel the way I did when I was a child, before everything changed. Story 38. I struggled with depression throughout my school years. During that time, I became involved with someone much older who misled me about who he really was. We eventually met in real life, and he became my first experience with almost everything, except the most serious step, thankfully. I was already missing a lot of school, but after that, the absences became constant. My teachers disliked me because I was gone so often. Later, when I transferred to another school, I faced bullying and eventually dropped out. I lost contact with most of the few friends I had, and the couple I still speak to don't know the truth. To this day, I tell everyone I graduated, even my extended family. Now I'm 24. My cousin, a few years younger than me, is in university studying to become a lawyer and is at the top of her class. I'm proud of her, but I'm also envious, and I can't help comparing myself to her. I hate talking to my extended family because they always ask how my education is going. They don't know I dropped out, so I lie and tell them I'm in college. The truth is I got my GED, and the last time I was in college was 4 years ago. I only need 2 more classes to finish my associate's degree, but like everything else in my life, I never seem to make it to the finish line. I feel like a failure, embarrassed to be 24 and not in a university, especially since higher education is so important to my family. I don't even know what I want to study if I did go back. I don't have anyone to hang out with in real life, so I stay at home all day, making online friends and watching movies. I'm not working right now. Around my mom and siblings, I act bubbly, smiling and making them laugh, so they think I'm happy. But inside, I feel lost. I'm sad, and I don't know what to do or where to start. Life doesn't look promising, and that scares me. Story 39. I don't really have a relationship with my family. We live in the same house, but they know almost nothing about me. Not the music I listen to, who my friends are, or what I like. What hurt the most was in my freshman year of high school when a kid asked me, "Do your parents know what kind of music you listen to?" And another kid answered, "Of course, they're his parents." That's when I realized how abnormal my situation was. When I was younger, I used to be very social with my family, but since middle school, I've completely closed myself off. I don't know why, but it's like I just can't speak to them anymore. My parents still think I have a social life, but I don't. I sit alone at lunch now for the first time in my life. It's embarrassing and incredibly lonely to watch everyone hanging out together while realizing I may never experience that again. I lost all of my friends during COVID because they were really just school friends, and none of them stayed in touch outside of class. Now my only friend is a guy I know through Xbox who's a couple years older. I don't even know if I like him anymore. He's constantly drunk, and we don't have much to talk about except golf or random nonsense. He's also becoming more racist and extremely homophobic, which makes me even less sure I want to talk to him. My grades have slipped, and I feel no motivation for school or for the future. The only thing I look forward to is playing my guitar. Being surrounded by people all day while feeling utterly alone is torture. It feels like I can't relate to anyone and am constantly reminded of my failure to maintain relationships. It just hurts. Story 40. When I was 8, my younger sister was born with severe mental and physical disabilities. She could never walk, talk, or eat on her own, so my mom became her full-time caretaker with the help of nurses. Eventually, my mom took a job working from home for the same company where my dad was an executive. It gave her some sense of normalcy, and it wasn't unusual. Many people at my dad's company had spouses, friends, or family members hired for administrative roles. My sister passed away when I was 16. 2 years later, when I was 18, my dad told us something had happened at work. He was being accused of embezzlement. The company claimed my mom had never actually worked there, and that he had been secretly paying her. I knew that was false. I literally saw my mom working every single day with my own eyes, and we had no financial problems. My parents hired lawyers and private investigators. Many people backed up the truth, but the accusations persisted. Charges were never formally filed at the time, and we thought it was over. My dad got a new job, we moved, and life seemed to move on. But when I was 21, investigators showed up at our house. They threatened to arrest my mom if my dad didn't submit a plea. By then, we had already spent years in legal battles, nearly bankrupt. I think they knew threatening my mom would make my dad cave. The next day, he submitted a guilty plea. He served time and was only recently released. When he appeared in court, his lawyer had written a statement framing his guilt as desperation and depression over my sister's illness. My dad refused to read it aloud. He quietly tore it up at the stand. To this day, no one outside our family knows the full story. I still believe he was used as a scapegoat for something bigger inside that company. All they had to do was erase my mom from the payroll and twist the situation to frame him. It's baffled me for years, and at 26, I'm still haunted by how it all unfolded. It nearly broke our family apart, and I don't know if we'll ever have real answers. Story 41. My mother and I are only partially related to our family. My grandmother is my only true blood relative. My grandfather wasn't my mother's father, so technically my aunts and cousins aren't closely related to us. My mom is the oldest and most successful of her siblings, and I'm an only child, which made us the black sheep. We didn't need financial help or a place to live, unlike the others, and because of that, my mother often tried to buy my cousins' affection, which only fueled more resentment. Growing up, I was usually excluded. My family barely remembered my name and only contacted me when they needed work done. I rarely went to gatherings, rarely got updates, and was only included when it was convenient or to appease my mother. My great-grandparents raised me while my mom worked, and I looked up to them as my real parental figures. I was the only one who visited my great-grandfather in the hospital. Before a business trip to Germany, I saw him alive for the last time. He left me a letter and assets in his will, but my aunts erased me from it, withheld the letter, and used power of attorney to grab everything. Years later, when my great-grandmother died, jewelry and heirlooms disappeared within hours, and I wasn't even told about her passing until weeks later. My connection to my family broke completely. Now in my 20s, it feels like it's just me and my mom. I don't resent their envy. My mom worked herself to the bone to earn her success. She was a single mother, working 2 jobs while studying, and later became a dentist managing practices across Georgia. She gave everything to me and even spoiled my cousins, despite how they treated her. I do have one bright spot, my adopted brother, Jacob. We met when we were 11 or 12, bonded over video games and anime, and became inseparable. His family had struggled with addiction, and when a man set their house on fire, Jacob and his siblings were put up for adoption. My mom took Jacob in, adopted him, and he became my real brother. Of course, my relatives hated us even more for it. As for my childhood, I lived through years of abuse at the hands of one of my mom's boyfriends. He beat me daily with newspapers and tape, careful not to leave obvious marks. He deprived me of food, even stole my first PlayStation, and hit me if I mentioned it. My only peace was when my mom came home from work. Eventually, she found out during one of our nightly me and you time routines. She cried, called the police, and he disappeared. Later, he married, had a child, and somehow became a good father. I remember once calling him Dad, only for him to slap me and scream that I wasn't his kid. Years later, my grandfather admitted during a forced apology that he had known all along about the abuse, but didn't intervene.